Angela Medrano, thanks for taking a few minutes to talk about the refugee resettlement program. I know you probably have the same questions that everyone else in New Mexico has at this point, which is how many people are going to be arriving from Afghanistan and when? What do you know right now?
Thank you, Matt. It's good to see you again. New Mexico at this point, Human Services Department knows that Holloman Air Force Base has been selected as one of the receiving sites for refugees in New Mexico. I am not aware of any individuals that have arrived yet. That's not to say that they have not, but we are working very closely with our partners in New Mexico to prepare for the arrival.
One of the things that I've heard from officials at the White House is that not everyone who comes to Holloman Air Force Base or to Fort Bliss is going to be relocated in New Mexico. These are just the military installations that have been identified. Do you have a sense of what portion might be coming to New Mexico, or is that still up in the air right now?
It's still up in the air right now, Matt. It's very, very hard to know how many refugees will choose to resettle in New Mexico. But we are in close communication with our contractor, Lutheran Family Services, who will be providing many of the services that the refugees will need as they transition to Holloman or who choose to resettle in New Mexico.
That's an important point, I think. It's a choice for them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, they may. Some of the refugees may arrive in New Mexico with family that are already located in the United States, either in New Mexico or in another state. Refugees may arrive with no family members in the United States, but may have some resources available to them. And these individuals will make a choice about where they'd like to reside within the U.S. And some may arrive with no resources and no family members available to them. And those are the ones I anticipate we would be providing the most assistance to.
Okay, and you mentioned that Lutheran Family Services is a contractor with the state to handle a lot of this. When do they sort of pick up the baton and start coordinating some of these services? At what point in the process?
That's a great question, Matt. You know, they've been working very, very hard with their national partner, their national organization, to be in close communication about those individuals that may be wishing to resettle in New Mexico, because there are other military bases where these individuals are arriving to. They may choose New Mexico and be transported to New Mexico to resettle in.
Okay. We spoke to a man named Mullah Akbar who emigrated from Afghanistan in the late 1980s. He owns a business down in Albuquerque. He pointed out that while it's small, there is a community of Afghan families in New Mexico, and it's growing. What role do they play in this process?
Gosh, Matt, I would assume that they would help to make this transition as smooth as possible for them, and hopefully step in to help volunteer with Lutheran Family Services or any of the other faith-based organizations that are going to be providing assistance to these individuals and help them feel welcome.
Is this the sort of situation where a person or a family needs some sort of sponsorship to be able to enter the U.S., or are they able to enter on their own through some of the immigration statuses, I guess, that the federal government designates?
Yeah, they're not required to have a sponsor, to my knowledge, Matt. So some of these individuals may not know anyone in the United States, and will have to make a decision about where they'd like to settle.
Do you have any COVID concerns, or is that something that's probably well taken care of by the time the state or Lutheran Family Services ends up interacting with these folks?
I don't have a lot of information about the COVID testing. It's my understanding that they are being tested upon arrival into the U.S., but I don't have confirmation of that from any formal source.
Okay. I know we're just in the early stages right now. Are there any comparisons that you can make to the influx of Latin immigrants and asylum seekers that we saw in 2019?
I wasn't involved in that effort, Matt, so I can't speak to that. In my career, this is the largest effort I've worked with, and partnering with our team at HSD and working with Lutheran Family Services, I'm finding this to be a very educational process for myself as well as we go through these steps.
Certainly. The program, to my understanding, it relies on federal funds, or does the state kick in money too?
It's a federally funded program, Matt. They provide us with a grant of award each year, specifically for this refugee effort. It's the Office of Refugee Resettlement Office that awards New Mexico funding. In federal fiscal year 20, we were awarded 1.2 million. Thus far in federal fiscal year 21, we've been awarded 1.1 million.
That sounds, it's millions of dollars, of course, but it doesn't sound like a lot. Do you anticipate needing more?
Depending on the number of individuals that choose to resettle in New Mexico, Matt, you are spot on. We may need additional funding, and I have not yet heard of any potential funding coming our way as a result of this effort. So we are staying in close communication with our federal partners about that.
I know that part of your job is not just speaking to the media, but talking to legislators too. Are you getting a lot of similar questions from them?
I haven't yet, Matt, but I'm headed to a legislative committee where this may come up.
Excellent. Well, we will let you get to that. Human Services Department Deputy Secretary Angela Madrano, we really thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Take care.